Yes.
My head's a little fuzzy tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry, Colleen.
Oh,
Colleen
sorry.
sounds
And
terrible.
Wayne White.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you. This open meeting of the Maynard School Committee is being conducted remotely as allowed in the Act Governor Baker signed into law on July 16, 2022, extending certain pandemic-related policy measures. This bill authorized the continuation of remote meetings and public access under the open meeting law and other remote meeting provisions until March 31st, 2023. This committee is convening by Zoom as posted on the district's website. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording, which is audible to and viewable by the public. Additionally, please use the raise your hand function to let the chair know if you are planning to record or broadcast this meeting. Most of the supporting materials that have been provided for the members of this body are available on the Maynard Public Schools website in a folder titled 2022-2023 Agendas under the tab Agendas under the tab School Committee. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda and documents unless the chair notes otherwise. Any citizen wishing to make a comment to be read during a virtual meeting and entered into the public record may do so by emailing comments to comments4scmeeting@maynard.k12.ma.us. Comments need to be emailed in advance and will be received up until the public comments agenda item is addressed. Please include public comment in the subject line and your full name and street address in the body of your email. Emails without this information cannot be read. Statements longer than 350 words may be cut short at the 3-minute mark to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard, but will be submitted in their entirety for the public record. The chair will read only one statement from each individual. However, additional comments may be submitted for the public record by providing a copy to the chair via email up until the end of the meeting, explicitly stating their desire to have these additional comments included in the public record. Please be aware that the purpose of the public comments period is a devoted time for the school committee to hear from the community it serves. As such, the protocol supports the unidirectional public sharing of public comments rather than a bidirectional conversation. Before we go to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will ask each member if they have any comments, questions, or motions that they would like to make. I will go through the members for additional comments or questions if time allows. Please hold off on speaking until until your name is called, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If members wish to engage with other members, please do so through the chair and take care not to interrupt anyone who is speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, roll call to come to order. Mauro?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
And Natasha?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Do we have citizens' comments now or still none?
Nothing right now.
Okay. Is there urgent business, Brian?
No urgent business tonight.
Okay. Student representatives report.
He's muted.
Yeah.
Normally I can't unmute myself, so that's nice.
Hi.
Hi, y'all.
Yes.
Again.
Rachel's not going to be with us today. She had something, but I'm here. It's been a busy. Sorry, there's like a peep in. Yeah, it's been a pretty busy week for students with the telethon is this weekend. So we've been at the station pretty much every single day this week, just getting prep ready for that. Sports also started up. We have basketball. They have a couple scrimmages this week, so go to those if you're interested. And also winter track, which is fairly new at this high school, but it's a lot of people do it. It's very popular because it's more relaxed than the other sports. Yeah, a group of our SAC students last Friday attended a Becoming a Student of Leadership like kind of service training at the MIAA, and we're excited to bring a lot like some of those leadership qualities to the high school. But that's what's been going on with us. In general, our like stuff that we've been working on in SAC and in student council have been the youth risk behavior survey, which went out last year. We finally got the results for that. So there's a subcommittee, there's a committee that's being formed to analyze the results and like talk about things for them before January's community forum. And we have a lot of student involvement in that. We're really excited that like students are gonna be like analyzing the results of the survey and like come to conclusions from it. On food, I know that was a concern. I was saying you guys were interested in a lot. The food quality on the main lunch is still pretty intermittent, but we have seen like some improvements, particularly when it comes to service and stuff after our meetings with Whitson's. Food waste has been going down slowly, but consistently every week we've been like working on it, and it's not like down to zero yet, but it's like there's definitely a noticeable like decrease that's like keeps going down. I know this meeting is the budget, and I just wanted to give like some of the things we talked about with other students and that we noticed as students that we think should be given consideration in the budget. And one of the biggest things is mental health, which we feel like often like gets underappreciated for students, especially in the high school and middle schools. A lot of students are really struggling with mental health. And we think that having an additional adjustment counselor in the high school would really help students be calm and like have a place to go if they're stressed out or having like a panic attack on school grounds. Another thing that was on our like talks with the bleachers, which we know there is a plan to deal with the bleachers, but we just wanted it to be known that like that's one of our student priorities is the bleachers being fixed. And just in general maintenance, honestly, a lot of times it costs us more to like go back once it's already broken and like go a huge repair than if we just like spent a little bit every year to keep it like just maintained. And that's a lot of students said they felt like sometimes we were just like pushing things off until they eventually broke. But we really should have just been like just keeping on top of it. Yeah, other things for budget. We think that like career focused pathways for students and like increasing pathways for students, particularly in business and the arts are just would be appreciated, because a lot of times like students who are interested in business kind of like don't really have a pathway at Maynard. They kind of like just like make their own pathway based on like random electives they pick up. Yeah, and those were our main ones. Another thing was drug usage. We feel like if like some money was spent on like preventing drug usage in a like supportive way rather than like a punitive way, we'd have a lot more success than just like more like punitive measures that have taken place in the past. And that's basically it. Coming up, we have the Beacon Santa Telethon, like I said, as well as hockey starting up. I don't think they've had any games yet, but they have started practices. So look forward into that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For the lunch issue, have the portion sizes been getting any better, or is that still an issue?
The portions have, like, I think they're like a bit larger, but like, I don't know. Like, honestly, a lot of people like the main complaint wasn't really size. It was more just like quality. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I had heard from a couple of kids about this, the being hungry at the end of lunch, and that was worrying me.
Yeah.
That's awesome that it's not as much of an issue.
Yeah.
And then do you have enough chaperones? I know there was an issue with chaperones for the telethon. Have there been enough? Is there enough now?
Yes, we did some like, yes, we figured it out.
Great. Mary?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go to a SAC meeting last week, Liam, right? And
Yep.
I was incredibly impressed, as I always am, with the number of students that are on SAC. There had to be 12 to 15, I think, in the room. And the robust and thoughtful discussion that was going on with different issues. So I know I sent all the other school committee members their schedule. So I know it's a requirement for us to go to these meetings, but I strongly recommend it. I'm definitely going to be going to quite a number of them because an awful lot of good discussion goes on there. So just wanted to throw that out. So thank you, Liam.
questions? Thank you also for the budget suggestions. Those were really consistent with what I think a lot of our goals are. And it's really great to hear that what you guys are seeing and wanting is consistent with what we're wanting as well.
No, yeah, that was definitely like something like some people said, like they were like, oh, why are we like making like budget suggestions if this is what they're working on? But we just felt like it was good to like reinforce that, you know.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I think it's hugely important because particularly we have to add, like, there's what we want in an ideal world, but we don't set the budget for how much the school has to work with. And so as we try to advocate to FinCom and Select Board, I think it's really helpful to say the students are asking for this too. It's not us in a silo. So I really appreciate that. And Natasha, sorry, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, no, I actually was going to comment along those same lines that I think don't underestimate the weight of a student voice carries to the conversation. I think that that population and our teachers are the ones directly impacted by these type of policy and financial decisions. So we are, informed as much as what we can see and get information, but it's really your intimate experiences in the education world that impact the most. So I really would welcome wholeheartedly at any point, even if you feel that there is conversation, to add additional voice to any particular matter that you feel is worthwhile advocating again and again and again. Sometimes we each our own have a certain thing that we continuously speak to. One time sometimes is not enough, so please don't feel that there's just, we said it once when you said it. If it's important to you, I would really hope that you continue to advocate something that's important, that you really feel will help the population, your students that you represent. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm also going to just mention, I'm glad that the students are looking at the results from the risk survey. I think that's going to be really interesting for you to do and useful for you to do. And I hope we hear more about what your analysis is afterwards.
Yeah, it is tough because when the survey was going out, there was a lot of like misinformation being spread about how it's going to be used to like get students in trouble. So we're we're taking the like results with that in mind, that like they might not be accurate on some issues, but it's still gonna be useful.
Yeah,
sure.
the reason why it's important that you're there, so you can think about that. So.
And we hope that like when we give out the survey again this year, hopefully we'll be able to educate students about how it doesn't really get used that way. And we'll be able to get better results, because last year it was kind of a mess.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that.
I don't know if Mauro has any thoughts. I just had a couple of other things.
Oh, go ahead, Mary. I'm all set. I think Liam, you guys are doing a great job. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So just a couple of things that I wrote down. Brian, since Liam is talking and all the other students talked about the benefit of having an extra counselor at the high school. I know we've got the affiliation now with Framingham State University. Is there any way that we could get somebody maybe to do an internship to help in that capacity, or is that?
Yeah, we can certainly continue to look into that. I mean, that's sort of an ongoing conversation with them. And if they have applicants and we certainly have the capacity to support that, we'll work with them on that.
Okay, excellent. And then I had also mentioned at the meeting last week, Liam, and I mentioned it actually at the Wellness Committee meeting also, about how Mrs. Sullivan is one of the people on the committee of the youth risk, and she helps to create and adjust the questions and all of that. So I told her that she should be reaching out to you guys. You guys probably have already talked, but because it is really important, because that seemed to come out loud and clear last week that, kids are afraid, the students are afraid to answer, because Maynard's such a small town that some of the questions they could actually pinpoint who the student was that was answering. So just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, and I think it is important that students know that like the way we see the data, the way that like the people, like the administration, the way the students will eventually see the data, it's like you don't see individual answers. You just see like kind of like, this is how many people in the 8th grade answered this way, or like it's not like you could track down an individual student even if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Colleen's hands up.
Mary, just so you know, we do have an intern this year, and we did have one last year as well.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking, and is it in that department, Colleen?
In guidance. In
Okay.
guidance.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. Thank you.
Is it an adjustment counselor intern or a guidance counselor intern?
might be a little bit of both.
Okay.
The young lady this year has a therapy dog.
Okay, great. Okay.
Elizabeth, York, Principal York, sorry. I saw her raise her hand.
Oh, she's muted.
Yeah, Colleen.
Yes, I just wanted to say that our intern is Abby Kilcoman, and she is a school counselor intern, but she absolutely is also helping with crisis counseling and working with students when they're having a hard time. Liam mentioned that one of the budget neutral things we want very much to do is to have a space next year where an adjustment counselor can help students when they are, as Liam mentioned, having panic attacks at school or just feel like they can't deal, because we have a phenomenon, I think, of too many students feeling like they can't finish their day and they need to go home. And I'd love to have a spot where they can recollect themselves, have a little time out, and then maybe go back to class and finish their day. And I know most students would prefer that as well. And unfortunately, our current school counselor space is a little bit public. It's a nice space for college planning and for meeting in groups, but it's not really that chill spot that we have in mind.
Your Principal
That's
York.
great. Anything else? Okay.
Mary, I know that a couple of us had sent over to you some opportunities where we would be able to attend some of the meetings. Is there anything else we should do to confirm that? Because I know, Elizabeth, I think you were also interested in one or two there, and I just want to make sure we're not having a quorum at any of them.
So I think I would recommend that you speak to Mrs. Doctorov and just let her know. I know I sent you guys the schedule, so I'll leave it to you to.
Okay, so
yeah.
we should just email her directly to
Yes,
confirm.
yeah.
And Principal York, I see her.
Principal York,
Okay.
yep, exactly. Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure, I didn't want to just show up and, thinking it's all set and done. So that would be great. Okay, wonderful, we'll do.
Okay, and the meetings they set them up a month at a time. So they'll keep
Okay.
us in the loop.
Terrific. If there's any opportunity, I wonder to, if we're getting some ongoing, because then we can kind of coordinate amongst ourselves, which, one or two might want to attend. That would just be great. I'm very excited about this and hearing all the development and professional development they're learning with these particular roles as well. It's just phenomenal. So Liam, awesome work. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam. Brian, the superintendent's report.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. That was a great conversation. It kind of nicely transitions into the superintendent's report. A lot of those topics are going to come up in the next several minutes. Colleen, if you want to share that brief superintendent report, which then kind of links to some topics that we'll talk about tonight. That would be fabulous. I can even see it tonight, so it's really exciting. Although I'm on a very small screen, so we'll go to the next slide. And just a general update, this one definitely ties to what Liam had just mentioned about the bleachers, and Mike Aria, along with the support of myself, Wayne White, and several townspeople being town administrator and DPW, resubmitted the application to CPC that they asked for. They liked our application, but they liked it to look a little differently. Quite frankly, they wanted it to be divided into two sections or two applications, one being for design and then one being for replacement. So we amended the application and resubmitted it to them in the way that they preferred. And we're currently in the process of gathering more financial information to share with you and with the select board in terms, there's really about 8 options for bleachers. So, and really just trying to get a monetary, and not just like we think monetary, but an actual dollar figure, preferably from like a designer in terms of what things will cost. So in terms of these options, we created a spreadsheet that has everything from the demolition of visitor bleachers, to demolition of home side bleachers, to improving the home side bleachers, improving them with ADA capacity, et cetera. And it goes on all the way to new bleachers with only on the home side, new bleachers with a press box, new bleachers with a press box and an alternate of restrooms. So there's this lot, like 8 different options. And some of them are simply demolition of stuff we don't no longer need. And if you have been to if recently you've been to high schools, you'll see that most high schools have gone to the model of building one side of bleachers for both home and visitor. It's a more economical way and it seems to work really well. So that's also within this chart. And yep.
Brian, I think you mentioned this when we met last week, but because I know Greg was talking about having a task force, but you're able to at least utilize the task force you already have with a lot of those major stakeholders to vet some of these at some point, right? You were going to be meeting or reconvening soon, right? So they will be part of these informed conversations. So I guess ultimately what I'm asking for is anything we see back to us, should we assume that it has been talked at that level with those stakeholders beforehand?
Well, I will, to be honest, I will tell you whether or not it has, because so we have a meeting scheduled. And quite frankly, Greg said he was going to create a task force. I think we've sort of flipped it because I said, I have a group. You don't have to call it like my task force, but it's a group of
task force, a slice of all the constituents that are necessary.
It's got all the constituencies that we want. And we have a meeting. We've already got a meeting on the books. Mary's part of that, as is Hillary, I believe. And several others in terms of Friends of Maynard Soccer and Maynard Youth Football and AVLL. I mean, it is so the only addition to that group is Greg, which is fine. I mean, it'll work well. And yes, we will flush things out through that group. If there's a time when I'm bringing you something that hasn't gone through that group, I will just let you know.
Yeah, if there's something that has it, like for whatever reason, it would just be, exactly. I would just want to make sure we understand that there, and with that reasoning, why it couldn't happen for whatever. Thank you.
So I'll keep you informed on that. All right, next slide, Colleen. Thank
Brian,
you.
Before you go, one question about it. So the one thing that you had talked about, or we had talked about, but wasn't in here, was the cost of getting bleachers or that for graduation. Should that, and that was under the rent bleachers portion, should that be added?
Yep, I'll add that. And we kind of know that that's in the big scope of all of this. It's a minimal expense.
But again, if we're talking about free cash or we're talking about the reserve, then that's a good number to incorporate in there too, right?
Yes,
and it also was expected to be less in the spring, right? Because it's it was less capacity that would be needed for this.
Right. So
Okay.
Right. So the fall is our heavy usage. We would continue to rent 2 of the large bleachers. We obviously don't need them in winter. And then in spring, we would potentially rent 1. And then for graduation, what I've seen, most schools don't rent bleachers per se. They would go to a company and they would get, just for sake of argument, 1,000 chairs and a portable stage with a tent over it for the speakers. And then the graduates would walk across, receive their diploma, etc. But we'll get a price for that as well. We'll add that. Thank you for that, Mary.
And Brian, the spreadsheet that you put together, that is going to be filled in as you gather more information, is what I'm understanding. And then is there a deadline for when we can expect it all to be filled in, or we just can't know that yet?
I don't know that yet. And some of it requires us to get approval from CPC to get money in order to get a design firm to give us some of those numbers. So I don't have a drop dead date on that yet, but I have a conversation with Greg scheduled this week to move that forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just as a side note, I really like this layout. Thank you. This is like the clearest that I've seen.
Oh, good. You know what? I think we were all feeling like there's so much information and we just needed to be able to evaluate it in a simple format, but with all the right information. So
Thank you.
Getting it. Absolutely. Keenan Field. So this project was also supported by CPC. There was a grant written, procurement process followed, a company approved. So as you can see, I just bulleted some of the highlights. I included the whole thing for you. Not that I didn't expect you to read the 80-page document, but you could peruse it if you wanted. Maybe you did. And so I just pulled out the highlights from that, which is what we would have thought. We followed all the proper procurement processes, procedures. It involves the removal of the existing fence, the replacement of a new fence, Some foul ball netting. Fees and reimbursable costs combined shall not exceed the $99,120. And that's in that packet multiple times in terms of cost and whatnot. And I received that from the town, and they asked if it could be brought to school committee for your approval. So then it'll go back to select board, who actually I think is the one who enters the contract, but they certainly, as it's a school on school property, wanted your approval first. I know Wayne was involved with Justin, and Justin was involved with the procurement process. So very comfortable that processes have been followed. The company's ready to go. And they actually, given the weather that's been a little more mild this year than it has been sometimes, November, December, they'd like to start, if they can, before the ground actually has a hard frost.
Has this, has Jay seen this and okay, and is he good with the practical side of things?
I don't know if Jay, I assume Jay has.
Oh.
He's not real, be honest, I don't know. I would assume everybody who was part of the process is aware of it. They vetted several companies, and looking through the documentation, it's pretty thorough.
Yeah.
And
I just
from
wanna
my
make sure it wasn't like-
conversations with him, this is what we had talked about. The
Yeah.
removal of the fence, the replacement of the fence, and the foul ball netting. Those were the big things that we talked about. I think there were some other areas that he was looking at in-kind work to be done.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we didn't like totally take it over and we're missing something that we don't know because we're not.
So good point.
Softball
We're not
people.
taking this over, really.
Yeah.
They kind of punted the ball over to us. I said, absolutely. I reviewed the material, shared it with you, and said I would bring it to the school committee tonight for a vote to say, hopefully, that we approve moving forward with this project with Boston Hill Fence Company for an amount not to exceed $99,120. And then I'll send it back to, quite frankly, Justin and Greg, and they'll move it forward on their side.
Hillary, I think, and maybe Brian, might be able to confirm. I remember with the CPC application, school department was listed as the financial party, right? That would be managing the allocation of funds. Is that's part of why the
That's part-
school is this
Yes.
level of involvement, correct?
Correct. And if you, and I don't remember what page it was, but there's a signature page which Wayne has signed.
Right. I
So
did. Yeah,
if you go
exactly. So
through that,
I
you'd
did.
see his name. So we have our eyes on this project. It's just
Okay.
it's a little bit more of a group effort, given the type of project it is.
Okay. When does this need to be signed back and returned to, are they
If you
planning on
approve it
talking at the
tonight,
next?
I would sign it tomorrow and send it back to them.
Okay.
We received a public comment pertaining to this after we moved on from the public comments, but pretty close in time. So I just wanted to read it. It's short. It was from Sarah Donnelly. And she said, I was thrilled to see the proposed Keenan Field upgrades while at a football game this fall. I was looking over to Keenan and yet again for another year felt real disappointment that our girls softball field was in such a substantially substandard condition. I've had the same sinking feeling for years, even while my daughter played baseball on the beautiful field right next door. Last year, it became even more evident how needed these upgrades are as she started playing softball on Keenan. I'm thankful that proposed funding is coming to a vote, and I hope that you will agree that the funding and upgrades are necessary. Our softball athletes deserve the same standard of playing facilities as their baseball peers, just feet away on their own beautiful baseball field.
So that was
okay,
perfect
questions?
timing. Nice job, Madam Chair.
Questions?
I have one other question, but I'll wait till anyone else may
That's
have
fine.
more.
You can go, Natasha.
Okay. So, Brian, and this may have been in the 86 pages that if I didn't skim and see it, but as a general rule, when we have contractors that are working on school grounds, how does that work with regards to bonding or, kids? I know that I'm guessing they're working during the day when there might have kids on the field for other purposes. How does that work? Where we're I'm thinking like Corey checked, or, are there opportunities where they're going to be, is that, I didn't see it explicitly outlined in the language that I know they're insured, but
Yeah.
that their workers are bonded individually, or, but it might be part of the whole liability. But there was information that they could subcontract it out. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm just wondering, what is a practice that we would want to understand a little bit more on how that works.
So typically, if there are workers on school site, they are quarried. That's part of the process. And I don't recall in the 86 pages whether that is part of this. We don't have students out using, because it's winter. So we typically aren't on those fields right now during the day, if that's when they're working. And I would assume they are working sort of daylight hours. And that may be part of the bonding in there.
Okay. And it just might be something if you could maybe separately just confirm with
Sure.
outside. It wasn't clear, and I don't normally see that part of it very often, but it was just a question. It'd be good for me to have an understanding on what the current practice is, an expectation when we have vendors who are working on school property and in relation to quarry. And yes, and of course, winter, thank goodness, this is probably the best time to take advantage of before snow gets on the ground so they can do the work.
I will follow up on that. Yep.
Thank you, Brian.
Brian, I was just wondering, who's going to oversee this? Is it going to be Justin, or do we know who is going to sort of be our clerk of the works on this?
Our clerk of the works is really Wayne, and theirs is really Justin.
Okay. Okay.
And CPC probably has their eyes on it as it's their grant as well.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a group effort there.
Okay. Thank you.
Mary, are you thinking that more like the actual because I'm guessing
just
Wayne's not going to be able to.
physically. No, Wayne's
yeah.
not. I'm thinking Justin is probably, knowing Justin, he'll probably drive by every once in a while. So I feel good knowing that. So yeah, it's more physical. It's more being, just checking out the work as it's being done to make sure that, it's being done well and
keeping up to space and with
And
specs
we'll make sure
and all
that we have, we have a couple of other people on staff that I can make sure take a ride over every day once this gets approved, just to put eyes on site. That would either be our athletic director and or our facilities manager, just to put eyes
make sure
on
that
it
the
every day.
check-in.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah.
That can be part of the process as well. No problem.
I was clearly expecting that they would be checking on things.
Yeah, that's pretty normal.
Yeah. Any
So
other
we
questions?
could go on, or if there are no other questions, Madam Chair, if somebody wanted to make.
Maro or
somebody was
Elizabeth, do you
willing-
have any questions?
I just want to say I'm noticing that it's about $50,000 less than we thought it would be in the original proposal. So that's kind of good news also.
Mhm.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, which means that this might be, if it's unused, it could be reallocated in some capacity by the CPC,
Mhm.
let's say for bleachers or something. Just saying, if it's unused for the one thing, that there's an
That would be
opportunity
great.
there. But it's there for, or they also had another part of the project. I know that they had to trim this one back for. So, but it is, yes, a very good point, Beth. We don't see a lot of things coming in under these days. So
Yeah.
Wasn't this estimate increased for potential inflation and stuff given COVID at the sort of towards the end of the application? Or am I confusing that with something else?
I just remember 150,000.
Yeah. Sorry, Maro.
Brian, if they're able to start before the frost, does that move the whole timeline of getting this finished sooner up?
If this gets approved and we move it forward, they're planning on, from what I understand, starting as soon as possible before the frost. The goal being having it done, and I think they potentially could get it
February.
done prior to spring.
Yeah, February
Okay.
28th is what they said. Yeah.
Right. So that's the goal.
Yeah, which is great.
Great, thank you.
Are people comfortable voting today so we can
I am.
get this going?
I think I would be, but you made a good point earlier about just getting, I know that there was that Friends of softball that really kind of spearheaded this, and just they had any concerns that we want to be cognizant of later. I don't think it's going to impact the bidding at this point, but just regarding the scope of work and all of those things, it would just be good to hear some feedback as far as what are the things that they would, concern with, or like, hey, this looks great, exactly how we envisioned. That would be helpful to know as well.
I wonder though if this is general enough at this stage with this contract that, and given that the procurement process happened and whatnot, like if they can give feedback on specifics and details after after the fact.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning. Like we would,
Okay.
I don't think their feedback is going to change the procurement where we are, but it would just be good to make sure that we are just intentionally soliciting their feedback. To
Maybe we could send them
consider.
the copy and ask for feedback before it gets to the select board. So if there needs to be, before they actually select board and Greg sign it, if there are any small details,
Good
we
idea.
would have an opportunity to incorporate that. Does that make sense?
Or if there's any areas that we should be keeping a close eye on during the building of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You don't know what you don't know. So like it would just
Yeah.
really
Right.
be.
I want to definitely involve them, but I also don't want to hold up the vote on it.
Right.
No.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good
Okay.
idea.
All right. So the motion would be that we are approving, we're approving the contract? Is that what it is? We're approving the recommended contract to engage with this vendor?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, let me pull up the intent to award letter. So I make a motion that we approve the contract presented to firm Boston Hill Fence LLC in regards to the Keenan Field fencing project to commence using the CPC funds totaling $99,120 as indicated.
I'll second.
Paul, Mauro,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Natasha,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
All right. Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
team.
Yeah,
Much
thank-
appreciated. I'll
Thank you.
move that back to Greg tomorrow. Thank you very much. Building.
Thank you, Wayne.
Green-
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Friends of,
Yes,
I just wanted
thank you,
to
Wayne.
even thanks Wayne for all that, and also thanks to the Maynard Friends of Softball for even advocating for this. So much appreciated.
So just to be clear, who is actually reaching out to them and making sure that they know when the meeting is and that we actually want their feedback?
I can reach
I
out to
can.
them or
Okay.
you,
Oh,
whoever
yeah.
said that.
Okay. all
No,
right.
Brian, you can.
Who
Okay.
said
Yeah,
that? I
Brian.
don't, we don't both have to do it.
Okay.
Feel free. Who said that?
CC. Yeah. CC.
Who said
I
that?
said that, but it's better for you to do it. So
Yeah, it is better, I think, for Brian to do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
It'll be important.
You said that, Brian.
Well, you gotta love Zoom. I can only see like 3 faces. And I'm like, I
There
didn't
you
see
go.
anybody's
There you
face
go.
move. So anyway, the Green Meadow Building Project, we had a pretty well-attended community forum on November 29th. We had a little over 50 people there. So for our small town, I felt like we're getting our numbers up there and getting the word out there. It was the newest information presented by Chris and Phil. Jerry did a great job sort of overseeing and emceeing the presentation as well. Jerry head the building committee. And the presentation, it was very noticeable. There was a strong design of the building. These were some of the comments from the people during the discussion. It was a very professional presentation. There was appreciation expressed for the owner's project manager, the design team, the Green Meadow Building Committee. There were questions on both sides of this sustainability issue, and it's not a right or a wrong. There were just questions. Clearly, we have a sustainability committee who feels very strongly about being as sustainable as possible. And we have, and there are other folks that want us to be sustainable, but also want us to have some of the traditional forms of energy. So there were questions about sustainability, the site, and the overall cost of the project. And, we're a couple of years, or at least a year post-pandemic, which has just increased things pretty significantly. So those were some of the overall questions, which we'll be working through. There'll be more opportunities for community forums. Obviously, the building committee continues to meet. We actually have a meeting on Thursday with the MSBA about schematic design. That's like an all-day meeting just to see where we're at. So I would say this was a really well attended and strong participation, good questions from people. And when I say good questions, I mean, not everybody agreed. So there were some interest, just different points taken. And I know that the architects and the design team and the owners, project managers were listening to all that and seeing what they can do within our project. So I just wanted to give you an update.
Sasha?
Yeah, I actually, it was a really great presentation and overall, and I loved hearing the type of feedback that came in from people who worked in Maynard and who are very familiar with the facilities as well, which I thought was really helpful in their context and expertise in emergency systems. It seems like there was a theme there of concern about being, and I'm sure I'm not saying this right, but too green, that it would lessen our ability to be responsive in an emergency capacity by way of fuel, where like a generator, filling a generator might not. That seemed to be raised a couple of times as a concern, and I would like to hear back at some point, and maybe just if you guys are circling back to kind of process that feedback, if we would be, amiable to that, what that would look like, and does that change any impact to the certification that for the chips, if we were to expand in some way? Because I think that was what some of that effort of the zero we were hoping for, right? Because you get an increased reimbursement in some capacity. So where is that line that would change that tone? So I don't know if that's known now, or if that might be helpful to understand. Like, if we did this would be the result of what that would mean, because really that sounds like we would lose out on some funding opportunity by changing some of those more like the gas, having a more aligned feed directly to that. I didn't know, but that was really great feedback to hear. And from a parent perspective, just thinking about the small population, I really appreciated hearing that comment that talked about the kids who need to walk from 117. Right now, they just go right up the sidewalk, and in the future world, there is another street that they have to cross, and it's way down there. And so, what can be done about that type of feedback? Because that does seem more of a danger for as we're promoting a walkable town, and biking and all of those things that we are talking about part of our master plan, where we're actually increasing a little bit of a safety issue there. So that was just, again, another feedback that I thought was really great to hear, that perspective. And also the playground area, there was it that the police department made a recommendation to have the playgrounds more up front and not towards the back?
That's
Was
correct. It was originally in the back. We moved it to, the design team was able to reconfigure to the front so that it had a better sight line from basically from 117 or from the front of the building for safety.
Because I think feedback that I had heard after, for those who attended, that there was some concern that when you think of, and again, worst case scenario, like an active shooter, that having the kids more up front would maybe didn't sound like the best approach, that you'd want to have them, like right now, they don't go right to the playground up front, right? It's after they pass the school building, it's a little bit there. So when we think about it from like an active shooter perspective, or kids at Green Meadow who are known to, bolt, how does that, because I think those are safety areas. I'd like to hear the different aspects of why one might be more considered versus, how these other risk areas are not considered as important when thinking about the playground layout.
So that was part of the safety meetings that were had earlier in the process. So Chris can respond to those, but we really did vet those pretty carefully with, the Maynard Police and the fire department and the school department and the design team to place it in a way that worked for students, that worked for the school department, and sort of met the bar of emergency services for the town.
Okay, and again, maybe this is just from an outside person not being
Sure.
party to that. I think
Yep.
this is something that we should be prepared to say, like for the person who's not in those safety committee meetings, that the reason why this seemed more important is because of X, Y, and Z, but we have these other safety, measures in place that we don't have right now, and whatever that might be. I think that's going to be really important to convey to the layperson who is not party to those security conversations in some way that is comfortable doing so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Natasha. Yeah, that's why I really like these forums, because it is bringing out questions that that we're going to keep getting asked. So we need to have the answers. So
Yeah, we need to have the answers. Exactly. So we're getting questions. What are we doing with those questions after, right? I think that's the part that people are going to want to see. Like, okay, I asked my question. Is the expectation is that maybe there'd be like an FAQ that could be developed later on that we can refer people to with some of these questions who were raised, because they were really great. And I don't want people to feel like I say something and then it goes into a black hole. What happens next after I bring up questions?
I'll work with the design team on that. They're pretty well versed in this. And that's
Thank
a
you
great
so much.
suggestion for the FAQ.
I know when we had like the COVID happen, and we had like an ongoing list of FAQs, because some of them are similar in theme that you're gonna maybe hear, and be great so we can just direct people to a one document or like a living document.
Yeah. And when is the next forum? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know that it's been scheduled yet.
Okay.
there was conversation about having more of them after the first of the year, right, Brian? Phil had
Yes.
mentioned that. So, but that's not going to be our only
No.
outlet. We need to start thinking about other ways to get out to people also.
And
Yeah,
I think also sorry.
I was just gonna say, I want to make sure that potentially there's some continuity between them,
One of the other things too, just to, I think would be helpful to emphasize as if we're gonna, because I know people will, budget is a theme of like, why are we doing this? And I know we've seen it already in social media, but just to constantly reinforce that there's no zero cost solution to doing, we have, our building is failing in capacity that right now. And so it still will require, so there's opportunities to constantly reinforce that the reason why we're doing this is because just to build a school, but current building facility is meeting end of life in their systems, and just each audience can hear that. So I think that would be important to just kind of hammer in every time.
Good suggestion.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I had kind of an additional question to Natasha's concern about the added crossing. Who pays for the crossing guards? Is that the town or is that us?
I think that's us.
Okay, so then that would mean we'd need an extra crossing guard.
I think Colleen's shaking her head no about
sorry, we don't?
who's paying for it.
I thought the town paid
The
for it.
police department. It's the police
Oh,
department.
my
But
mistake.
they journal stuff to us though. So I mean, maybe
I
not
don't
directly.
think-
Is that one of the
It may be a
things that they
shared,
journal?
could possibly be a shared cost end of year stuff, but
Yeah,
it
okay.
is, we'd never actually see the front end of it.
Like a bill. Okay.
Well, in any case, we'd probably need an extra body.
Mhm.
That's possible. Yep.
This issue I've brought up a number of times myself as being worrisome. So we do have to figure out a solution for it.
And that may be the solution. I think the issue is when you're doing a building and the building's not where the current building is, it works. I mean, everything we're talking about in terms of being able to access the building from 117 works well directly where the building is. But if the building's now moving over and we need to drive around the building, that's thus the extra cross that we'll need, the extra crossing that will exist. I don't think we can reconfigure the building. So the solution may be, we need to make sure that we have that crossing guard at the beginning and the end of the days. But it has definitely come up multiple times, so we'll have to address that for sure. I don't know, maybe somebody's watching TV. I hear
I
something.
know.
I thought it was,
Yeah.
it might be my house. There's a soccer
That's
game.
okay.
I didn't know if it was
I'm
soccer happening on. I was
Yeah,
just
there's a
wondering.
I don't know.
happening
Oh, look
you
at
guys for this.
soccer.
So you will continuously get updates on the Green Meadow project. And I will reach out to our design team about an FAQ. And actually, we have a meeting, as I said, Thursday anyway. So we'll
Thank
talk
you so
then at the
much.
latest. Absolutely. Thank you for the comments. Then we're going to get to the meat of this, which is really, this is like an overview. I just put it here. But there's an actual budget presentation which encompasses this. But this actually, I'm going to start with this and sort of start and end. Wait, go back, Colleen. Sorry. I know you're so ready. You're so ready to go. But this connects a little bit to how we started the meeting with Liam. So I just wanted to sort of stick here for a second. Our proposed FY24 budget, I'm going to do the presentation tonight and share it with everybody. And again, this is not a vote night. This is an information night. The vote will actually take place a couple of weeks from now on the 15th. Our total proposed budget is $22,845,577,000. But what connects to Liam, not Liam personally, but what he brought up, if you will, are the pathways and really increasing opportunities for student choice and voice, making sure that all students are really aware of and increasing their ability to take college credit bearing coursework while in high school. We've had individuals do that and do it really well, but expand that. And here's where the real connection is, making investments, increasing WAVM, expanding course offerings in computer science, and expand course offerings and pathways in terms of creating a business/DECA pathway and the performing arts. So those were the two big things that nicely aligned with what the students are saying, what the administration is saying, what I have the opportunity to present to you tonight. So I'm excited to just start with that. And also in terms of those pathways, really beginning them a little earlier in Fowler, so kids really see the direct connection to the high school in terms of computer science offerings and career exploration. So we're excited about all of that. All right, Colleen, you were ahead of me, so I appreciate that. We're ready to go on. Here's our roller coaster, people. This is our FY24 budget journey. It is exciting. We have worked really hard with a variety of stakeholders to get to the point where we can explain what we have, what we want to have, and how much it costs. So our purpose, and some of this, I think the school committee, because they've seen this, some of them year after year, they know this. But if you're new, if you're a parent, this may not all be obvious, is what I would say. So our purpose in terms of presenting a proposed budget is to recommend a fiscally responsible budget. And we evaluate a wide range of information. We try and align our school system with what we know is educationally sound, and it aligns with our strategic plan, the town's master plan, and at the end of it proposes that fiscally responsible budget to meet our goals of improving the educational experiences of our students and staff. Then we get to who's really on this leadership team, because I am not doing this in isolation. I don't get to sit in my office and just say, let's figure out how to spend this. It's an entire team. And this is just sort of the school side of that. So you have our business manager, director of student services, director of curriculum, and I can read the whole slide. I'll let you read it. I just want you to know that it's from myself, the central office, building level, and not only building level at the administrative level, but teachers, school councils, and thankful to Liam, students as well. So there's a lot of people involved in this, and school committee. We have lots of conversations, as some of them can attest to. We have budget subcommittee all year long, and this is all part of what goes into this budget. And as you can see, this is our strategic plan, and our budget will align with this in terms of having inclusive practices that support all students, pushing superior academic experience, and working to develop global citizens. And again, our overview, this is a little repetitive, but we continue to be inclusive in our budget building. You know, we advocate for our students and staff, and we take into account all the data that we can to create a maintenance of effort budget. And in doing so, we have to meet all of our contractual obligations, maintain our operating expenses, which includes current programs and services that are effective, student-centered. And in addition, we advocate strategically to move our district forward. So this is a slide that we added last year, I believe. I'm going to give Mary credit because I think she sort of made us a little more aware of it, but the town has a master plan. If you haven't seen it, it's roughly 300 pages. It's a great read. It covers all aspects of the town, and parts of it connect directly to the school system. So a section called PFS, otherwise known as Public Facilities and Services, and section 6 within this document supports a high quality education system. So as you can see, we connect to that in multiple ways. If you look at PFS2, for example, that's us in the town continuing to increase our programming to support students in terms of resiliency and mental health issues. And that connects to that school counselor that was mentioned early on. So it's just one way that we connect. Now, yep, sorry, Colin, keep going. I'll keep pace with you. This slide is kind of a fun hyperlink slide. As you hit those fingers under, say, FY19, and Colleen will do that for us, and then it'll go to FY19, you can see our budget was $18.5 million in FY19. And then in FY20, it went up $940,000, or about 5% between FY19 and FY20. FY21, again, it went up about the same amount and almost 5%, about $950,000. FY22 decrease, it went up about just under $700,000 for about 3.3% increase. FY23, significantly less of an increase, at about increase of about $530,000 to a 2.5% increase, which it's important that you see the changes in percentages, because the FY24 has a larger increase, but it's coming off of a very low increase in FY23. So next slide gets us to our proposed budget of $22,845,577,000, which is about $1,100 or $1.1 million, sorry, almost $1.2 million, or a 5.4% increase over last year. But if you look at the overall chart, which is our next slide, which really visually shows you that had we maintained pace in FY20 to FY21, if there weren't significant reductions in 22 and 23, we were really kind of on par for that, where we should be. So our ask this year isn't out of line. It's not like we're trying to do something super substantially different than we've done in the past. It's really, if you look at the chart, the trajectory is right in line. So with that said, our budget, our proposed budget is the 22,845,577, and that covers our current staffing and programming within the operational budget. So the only thing I would add to that is we do have some positions that, and I don't want to, are funded by ESSER. So ESSER was something that came out of the government to support schools. Towns had a different funding that supported them through the pandemic. So we have several positions funded that have been, for going into year 3, funded through ESSER, that this is not that. Those are separate, and a couple of those we hope to maintain and continue for another year. This is operating budget. So our level service, so to do exactly what we did this year, and not just, sometimes people think level service is just salaries. It really is significantly more complex than that. It's our contractual obligations, it's transportation, utilities, maintenance, technology, curriculum, professional development, special education expenses, stipends, athletics, drama. It's everything. It's not just turning the lights on and turning the heat on. We want heat this time of year. It's everything. That would be $22,744,577, which is above what the town has recommended in their early process. And I'm gonna assume the town didn't know, because they don't necessarily ask up front, what does it cost us to do business? They sort of know from last year what we spent. But their recommended number early in the process is significantly low. I'll just put it out there. It's $428,000, $177,000 low. It would, if they weren't to change that number and I have confidence that they will. But if they didn't, that would be a significant reduction to our current services. And it would be personnel. We don't have that kind of money anywhere else. The difference between their recommendation and what we're asking for is $529,177. So that's really, and I see a hand, but do we want to wait till the end, or do you want to?
I don't know. I just wanted to, I don't know if it's better to ask when you're on a particular slide or just to get a clarifying question.
Sure.
On the private, on this slide right here. So I think one of the points this came up out of the last year's budget process is that we were kind of given a higher number earlier on right now. And then a lot of planning was done around that number. And then come late January, it was a significant change. And it felt very surprising, you know, kind of out of left field. And I know that we advocated a lot to say, like, look, that can't happen that way, because there's a lot of work that we try to align with what is given to us ahead of time. So I'm hoping if this is the true number that is looked at, this will allow us to have a more in-depth conversation about what that requires a reduction of services when we go to FinCom and all these other places that we didn't really get that opportunity to do so, because it kind of happened after some of those major, you know, discussions in the school committee had already taken place. So so I am hopeful that it will go up as well, but I think it's good that we know as a worst case what that really means. And if there's a way to emphasize requires a reduction of, I think, significant, I think whatever that last bullet we can do to bold that, whatever, because I think it's certainly worth emphasizing a lot in written form as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
There was a noise in my house, but was the question whether or not we think that this recommended budget is accurate at this time, and whether or not Greg was being more conservative to not catch us off guard like last year? I missed the question part.
I think the way Brian, he was saying that we weren't, I guess, wasn't sure that we're hoping that this will move, right? The needle will move a little bit more, that this is not what we can plan on. And I think in the context of what happened last year, because this came up a lot in our town budget subcommittee meeting, that we didn't find out, you know, we went from like whatever 4 to like 2.5 we didn't find out until like late January, right? That number was happening when all of these conversations had already occurred, right? That initial number proposed by the town was a lot higher. And so it was a lot of, like, I would say last minute panic, but like, hey, how do you go from 4 to 2.0 within 2 months and not allow us a conversation to understand that? So I'm hoping that, you know, Greg he's cognizant of the damage that being too optimistic earlier on might be, but that as we get information as the budget process goes on, there might be more room to move the needle. At least allows us to have that conversation better than what happened last year.
Brian, were you thinking that this is more conservative this year because of what happened last year? Was that what, did I miss that part? But
So last year we got a number very early on that wasn't completely, it was a pretty reasonable number, if I recall, with Wayne. And we really worked to budget close to that number because we were able to. And it was clearly, it met the needs of operating expenses at that time. And then the number changed throughout the process. And that's what happens. The numbers change throughout the process. We understand that.
yeah,
So this year, I think we probably got it. I think the town recommended a slightly different number. And we looked at, what do we need? This is what we need. We did not shoot for the moon and say, you know, we need to replace this. We said, what do we need? And as you can see, our level service budget is just what it is, the 22.7. And we need a couple of things to help ourselves strategically move forward, which moves us to 22.8. So we're going to advocate for what we need.
okay. Sorry, I just thought I missed like a question
that's all.
and an answer. So.
Nope.
Okay, sorry, Mary, I saw you raise your hand too.
Oh, no, I just wanted to expand on what Natasha said. So with that last bullet requires a reduction of services to say including personnel or something like that. And I'm also writing down some notes because unfortunately, we received presentations from the 3 schools and they had additional really needed extra positions or that. So I think we should incorporate that into our letter that we eventually send to the selectmen also, in December. To say, these are the bare minimum of the things that we need, but also these are really essential things that we're not able to do that have been highlighted by the 3 different schools. So, because we can't say it often enough that, they're just in a different silo, and unless we really keep shouting what we need, they think that we just keep going on and we do a good job with what we've got. So that's all.
I think it's also striking, the proposed budget that's above, what the town is thinking that is reasonable for us doesn't include these positions that the kids are really depending on right now. Like in practice, the level service budget would encompass those MTSS positions or instructional coaches or data coaches and the extra counselor at Fowler and things like that. Like, I know obviously it doesn't in terms of operating budget, but in terms of the impact on the kids and the teachers, to provide the same level of support next year isn't even, something that's even being included yet.
Right. All right, we'll keep going. These are good conversations, and we will tweak the presentation. Absolutely, that's why we're doing it, to have these conversations. So the operating budget drivers, so people know when we talk about that, contractual obligations are salaries and wages, and clearly that's the majority of our expenses. That's what we, quite frankly, spend most of our money on. Transportation, general education transportation, those are those big yellow buses that we use. Technology has become more and more of an expense over time, especially after the post-pandemic, if you will. Utilities, we know they're going up, they're going up at home, they're going up for us. Facilities and maintenance, and that line can probably never be enough. We always need money for facilities and maintenance, and that's something that's, we do the best we can. Curriculum, again, that's the heart of what we do. That's, in next to what the teachers are doing, that's part of our instructional core. Special education, tuition and special education transportation, professional development, stipends. And just to be clear, we spend significantly more than that on stipends, but a lot of it comes from different grant funds. Athletics, that's a big chunk, but athletics are really important. It's a lot of athletics, it's a lot of teams, both boys and girls, 3 season. And it's one of the reasons that a lot of kids come to school. Money well spent. And then we have some others. Now we'll get to our 2 asks. We have 2 asks. That's all. We're trying to be cognizant of the town and the school and not ask for everything that we could possibly use. So one of our asks would be a clerical person within the central office to support 3 areas in particular. In a bigger system, quite frankly, our human resource department is really a department in a bigger system. Our human resource, thank you very much, Colleen Andrade, you are our human resource department. That's a big job in and of itself. So that this person would support her. Additionally, it would support special education. And again, in a lot of places, that's a full-blown department. We have Jeff as our director and Rhonda as the administrative assistant, and they manage it all. And that includes doing the majority of the Medicaid work. That's documentation for circuit breaker, that's filing and reviewing of IEPs that we have to keep. And it's very litigious. We have to do it, we have to do it right. It's the way it is. We also have Colleen handling transportation, because we don't have a transportation department. We have a Colleen department, and that encompasses transportation. So when people sign up for the buses. And then finally, we're very fortunate to have a full-time athletic director now. But in a lot of places, they have their own administrative assistant because there's so much to do in terms of registrations, physicals, fees, inventory, tracking, notices, game changes. I mean, the list goes on. So this one person And I know that sounds kind of funny. How is one person going to do that? But we have talked about it internally, and there's agreement that they could divide their time accordingly of when the need is within those 3 areas to really support them significantly and what it really does is it just makes the job that my administrative assistant Colleen does and Jeff's administrative assistant Rhonda that she does and the job that Mike's trying to do manageable. These are the people that are staying really late. These are the people that are coming into work on Saturday because you can't get the job done. So it's not about, that's what it's about. It's really about helping maintain these jobs and making them manageable jobs that people can do. And we want to do it. We want to do it well. We want to continue to do our jobs in a timely way. Need some support on this one. So that's one of our asks. It's been there in the past. And quite frankly, go back one more, Colleen. Sorry, go back. I'm not done talking about you. This was a position. So years and years ago, these positions got reduced. As budgets got tighter, they said, okay, well, we can't let something else go. And the decision was made to let that go. But all the work that goes with the jobs didn't go. If anything, they've expanded. So I see hands before we go to the next slide if you want.
Natasha? Colleen, can you unmute Natasha?
Oh, hi. Brian, I just wanted to, you mentioned something about just, I think it's probably worth mentioning because I know I've heard this before, but I know Colleen, who is our HR and transportation, she's also, I think, our information. So our, when there's a Freedom of Information Act, is
Correct.
that correct,
That's
Colleen?
correct.
And those have increased significantly over the past years, those type of requests, haven't they? As
They
far as the
have.
information and I just want to
FOIA
make sure that
requests,
that's,
yes.
yes, the FOIA requests and the student information request. I just would like to add that because that's one of the areas that just in society has gone up when it comes to people wondering how decisions are based in the education world.
Mhm.
I know
That's a
you,
good point.
yeah, I think it's really worth highlighting that that is a level of an increased area of work that requires attention, and it's very litigious as regards to the compliance around it. So, but again, the work grows, and
Yes.
and Colleen is I think yet to find a way to be cloned. So
This would help in that.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Agreed. Now you can go on, Colleen. We've talked about you. And our second request, which has come up before, and again, this was something that was in play several years ago, and it went away. The addition of lunchroom recess monitors for the Green Meadow School. The impact of that is what's really sort of the important thing, is it has the capacity by doing this to add 90 hours of instructional time for a student. Just letting that sit there for a minute, because that's a huge number. And if you do, so in my head, I'm like, oh, 90 hours, let's just round it to 100 for the sake of argument. By the time you're done at Green Meadow, it's 400 hours. So I feel like it's not a lot of money in the big scheme of things when we talk about, you know, an entire town budget. But if I can get 300 or so kids an extra 90 hours of instructional time year after year after year, that builds resiliency, that builds skills. And we know that we have kids that, due to the pandemic, didn't go through education in the normal way. There are some gaps there. And the earlier we can address those gaps, the better off we are. Not to say we don't need to address them in middle school and high school, because we do. But in terms of really that core foundation of reading and whatnot, we want to get that in the beginning. We want to get that at Green Meadow. So we've asked for this before. We're hoping that it makes it through the process this time, because we really do see the great value in increasing the amount of instructional time for our students. So, like I said, before we go on, and you can leave this slide, Colleen, we tried to be very strategic. There were lots of asks from our school councils, and some of them, quite frankly, were small. They were short in terms of finances. And we felt like we can find that. So some of the things we're able to do within those asks, and they didn't all have to end up on here. The ones that were bigger, an additional central office administrative person, funding recess monitors for the year for the entire building. Those were some of the bigger asks, which is why they're here, because we need to be able to do them. Anyway, now we look at some pie charts. Now we're really in Wayne White's world, our business manager, who this is his element. And so these pie charts are really kind of fun if you look at them. And what I hope comes out, and the reason we put them in there is really not only because we use nice colors and there's lots of nice numbers, is to really visually show that more than 90% of the money that gets spent is spent on kids. It goes back to the building. So if you notice in this slide, just more than half of it is Green Meadow in blue, the Fowler in red, and Maynard High School in gray. And then some of the other big areas would be special education, that's dark green, light green, and that's everything from just salaries to special ed tuitions and transportations. Those are not inexpensive things, but that's what our kids need. Some of our kids, that's what they need. Information technology has grown over the years. It's a bigger slice of the pie. We have a lot more devices running in our buildings. Curriculum, that's again, connects to that instructional core. Athletics, facilities. So there's a lot in this pie, if you will. It goes back to kids. There's a handful of things on the sides that don't go directly back to kids. And if it doesn't directly go back, it supports them in some way, shape, or form. So the next slide actually does it even better. It's by percentage, and I added it up. We're at about, not about, 94% are those areas that I just talked about, which is real. It's you know, as the year goes on, you can lose sight of that. And it's nice to go back and look at that chart and be like, you know what? We are focused on students. We are focused on staff, and that's where we are spending our money. And then actually, those two slides. So then we look to the future, and this we talked about at the very beginning. And I'm glad, you know, I will tell you, I did not know what Liam was going to say until today. So it just happens to align. And I think it's great that the school councils and the principals and the central office administration and the students, there's alignment there where people are thinking, how do we support Maynard? And it's the teachers and it's the students and it's the staff. And again, it's more opportunities for our students in terms of choice and voice, increasing college bearing coursework, pathways. We've added a global scholars pathway recently. We're looking at computer science. I mean, and we have staff that are super excited and students that are super excited about these things. And the other thing that came up most recently was the business and the DECA. And I know that I see Mary nodding her head because I can remember being at the Maynard Ed Foundation fundraiser last year, not fundraiser, the celebration at the end of the year. And one of the students had written a grant and gotten some seed money to start a DECA group. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that helps kids understand business. And then they go to college or they start their own business, or they go to college and then start their own business. Either way, but it's a great pathway forward. And performing arts. We have a fabulous performing arts, whether we talk about kids that are singing or kids that are playing instruments or kids that are thespians. It's strong and it matches up with Maynard. Maynard as a cultural center, it's a fit. And again, we're looking internally at, can we push these down a little bit in terms of, can we open kids' eyes a little bit earlier in terms of what our computer science offerings are in Fowler, so that they know what has the potential is when they get to high school and they can work with Mr. Sinopoli. And likewise, some career exploration so that they can start to say, hey, I don't really like that. I do like this, etc. So that's us looking forward. And these are exciting conversations. And they happen with kids and they happen with adults. So I'm happy to share that with you. All right, Colleen, I think we have one more slide. It is our statement of impact slide, which really is just a summary of reminding you our proposed FY24 maintenance of effort budget. It does link our strategic plan, the town master plan, and it was a pretty inclusive process in terms of working with administrators and staff. And it's all key to maintaining and strengthening our quality educational program for students and staff. And these improvements are what's going to allow us to keep moving forward. Their learning, their social emotional needs, and supporting our teachers as well. Everybody needs it right now. And you know, we see it in the news, etc. So we understand that. And then finally, thank you. I would like to thank you for giving me 15 minutes or 20 minutes of your time to share our proposed budget with you. And just as a reminder, I think if you look around at some surrounding towns, just for the fun of it, to see what their budgets are, our budget proposal of 22,845,577 is incredibly reasonable for the things that we offer our kids from pre-K through 12 and the opportunities that they have to participate and the professional development that we have to support our staff, top notch across the board for our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Oops. Do people have questions?
Before you go there, I should thank Wayne, because I just, you know what, I'm on the small screen, I can't see everybody. Wayne gets a mountain of credit for helping with the budget and the presentation and really just making it all come together in a format that is understandable to people who understand budgets like Wayne and people who may or may not look at budgets very often. To really, and that was the goal. So thank you to Wayne as well. Now,
Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
these people.
And thank you to all the other
Yeah,
central office
fair
staff
enough.
that have worked on this too.
Right.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks.
Yes.
everybody else.
Hey,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
I just have a couple things I want to highlight. First of all, I want to echo what Natasha said before about what happened last year and how hard that was, and how I remember you saying at the time, Brian, that we can probably take this year, that it's a decreased increase last year, but that isn't sustainable, and that we're going to have to eventually bounce back, or there's nothing we can do besides cut staff. So I just want to keep highlighting that slide that says that if we actually take what they're suggesting, we are going to have to cut staff. And I think that would be a real mistake. And I hope that we can do something to correct that. And so thank you for highlighting that, and thank you for making that so clear, both then and now.
Thank you.
And I have a couple, I guess, clarifying questions. One of them is, I'm not exactly clear about what happens. We have really gotten some talented teachers in the MTSS role, and they have been funded by ESSER. And I didn't see an acknowledgement of that in these slides as far as what happens to them now. So I'm just curious about do we, even your proposed budget that you're asking from the town, do we lose them?
So the way that we've structured this is we've kept our ESSER funded positions separate from our operating budget.
Right.
And I think, okay. So the way we've done it, and I do like the way you phrased it, those super talented MTSS teachers, those are the long-standing Maynard teachers. They've taken on the challenge of coming out of the classroom to do that. So when the grant is up, they would go back to their classroom, and the person who filled in for them for the year or two, they then would be the ones who would be moving on. Or if we had an opening and they were doing a great job, we may be able to keep them.
Yeah, sorry, I knew that. I'm sorry. I just meant that we are vacating those roles.
Okay, so for next year, right now we're looking, for the most part, I would say the short answer is yes. What we're looking at, are there opportunities within the operating budget to maintain one of them?
Okay. And then, and that I guess rolls into my next question, was that I was not at the last meeting because I was working, but I did see the slide shows that the councils put together from each of the schools. And they have asked for things like two MTSS teachers at Green Meadow, a math instruction specialist, and increased music instruction at the middle school. The social emotional support that Liam was mentioning, as well as increased support for our multilingual learners at the high school. So is there any way that, I think Mary was mentioning that she was writing some of this stuff down before too, is there any way that we can advocate for some of those things that we know we do, if not need now, will very soon need? How do we make sure that we try to get some of those things, at least all of them ideally?
good question. We can continue to advocate for them. And some of them, I mean, I'll put Jeff on the spot because he's got a plan. So like one of those items that came up, I don't have to put you on the spot. I was going to, in terms of the counselor and the mental health and really supporting our students. Sometimes it's, can we reallocate how we're spending money internally so that we in effect can remain budget neutral, but add that position. And I don't know if Jeff wants to talk a little bit about that. If he went like that, so he might not want to, if that's a secret.
No, that's fine. Right now, my plan, and I had shared this with CPAC as well. We have a wonderful school psychologist that went out on a leave of absence to have twins, which is great. The twins are great. Mom is great. And she's going to be coming back. We hired a school psych to cover her entire caseload, but even in doing that, we've had to contract out for someone to come in and do some assessments for all the IEP referrals, and those have increased quite a bit, partly because of COVID.
Yeah.
What I'm able to do is take some of that money I've spent for the assessment and shift some other funds so that when Amy comes back, we will have those 3 full-time school psychs, as well as Melissa Berger, who's our school psych overseeing Oasis. So that allows us to do more direct service work with our more vulnerable students based on SEL. And we do have Erin, who was a third counselor down at Green Meadow. She is covered under ESSER, but she's covered, I think, through next year. So my plan for next year is like, okay, how can we go about making sure we keep her? So that's my plan on that end. And, Ms. York has some outstanding ideas on how to increase some of the counseling needs at the high school. But I think more of that will be coming out later on how we're going to go about doing that.
So if I'm hearing correctly from what Brian just said and from what you're saying, Jeff, is that you are finding ways to be clever with the money that we have so that we do maintain the services that we have, including, if not 2, but 1 of the MTS teachers for next year, and potentially this social emotional support if we're clever about it.
Well, I don't know if it's clever. It's just use whatever term you like. It's a matter of, this is the money that we have.
Right.
I know I'm not going to get any more. How can I take the money that I have and shift it? Because what we're seeing is a greater need for direct service work. So that's why the additional school psychologist, that is ours, not a contracted person that can only give us, a shorter amount of hours, is the best way to go.
Right.
As far as, the MTS teachers, that's not really in my world, but
No,
we have that MTSS counselor that is covered for next year. And my goal would be next year, how to figure out how to do it for the year after. So I'm kind of a 2 years down the road as well, because this need I don't see as going away. And then, like I mentioned, Liz York has some thoughts on, for the high school, but we'll talk more about that later once we look at where those buckets are, those drawers full of money, find them and how to distribute them most effectively.
So can I just clarify though, all of this creative budgeting will help make up for some of the losses for running out of ESSER. It's not going to completely replace it, right? Like we're still going to, okay.
And we know that, ESSER was it was grant funded and it was time limited. So whatever we did, we knew that we had that time frame to benefit our students and staff. And then we needed to move on from there, that wasn't a forever, which is why, I give Wayne credit, is that he very carefully budgeted accordingly. So we know what we have and how to move on. And we know what is grant funded that if we can't move it into the operating budget, we don't.
I do remember at the beginning of all of this, at the beginning of my time on the school committee, I remember having a lot of conversations about not making sure we don't fall off a cliff at the end.
Correct.
So it sounds like you've made sure that's not happening, but I do think, as Hillary's saying, I think that we want to make sure that we are meeting all the needs and not just kind of, I admire, I guess I'm trying to communicate that I admire that you guys are working so hard to make sure that we're not letting people fall off the cliff, but also I want to say that I think it would be very important to maintain the level of services we have, if not increase them, especially as what you kind of alluded to about the pandemic and reading. I am seeing more and more about how kids have, because of the way the pandemic hit, for kids who are currently in like 3rd, 4th grade, a lot of them are coming out of the pandemic, in some cases, according to what I'm reading, not according to Maynard, are not able to read. full stop. So I think that we have to be careful about those kids that have come through this and what that means for them in the future. So I do want to make sure that we are advocating for everything we need, even though I also admire that you're working so hard to make sure that they don't fall off the cliff no matter what we get.
Yeah.
Thank you. And your point's well
I
taken.
really appreciate how well you're trying to work within the limitations that the town is providing, but I worry that we're taking the fall for things that aren't our choice. Like,
Right.
if we're only asking for, these really small increases, but knowing that the students really want these different things, the staff really want these different things. We had these different things through ESSER that we're going to be losing. I don't know that, I wonder if we're sort of saying no on behalf of the select board for them. And maybe we need to put it on them and say, maybe have another line that says, level services meeting, needs of, in order to meet the needs of the students at this time, this is what it would cost. Our fiscally conservative proposed budget would be what you currently have as the proposed budget. And then another line, because I get that we're not going to get all those other things, but I kind of like the community and the parents to know we're aware of those needs. We wish we could provide them, advocate to the select board, because I don't want us to say no before we even get to ask, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think and that's a good conversation. I think what it comes down to is we look at what has happened historically. And if we add everything in, and we haven't done that. So I'm sort of just off the cuff. I don't know. I would say, I would need your full support to want to go forward and say, we need a 10% increase. Because that's double anything that's happened historically. So we tried to look at that. And as Jeff said, how can we reallocate some internal money to meet this need? And how can we ask for some things within reason, which that 5% is within, that's historically within reason. But I hear the concern that hey, we have kids with needs and we want to advocate for them. So that's what we're trying to do, and finding that spot where we're advocating for them, but also making it a number that we actually think that we can get, so that we can fund it accordingly. We can use that money.
I think part of it could be an educational thing too, where making it clear to the town, people have different complaints about the school system, and say, these are your complaints could be addressed with this amount of money, or, we can accomplish these goals with this amount of money. The money may or may not exist, but, it's a choice that the town is making as a whole with what to fund. And obviously we're not going to get an override for operating budget stuff this year, but to start the conversation. So say, we do this really, really fiscally responsible request this year. The town gives us a hard time for requesting $400,000 more than they want us to give us. And then they act like they gave us all this extra money, but really all this extra money is still only meeting the bare minimum of what we really need.
Right.
And if in the
I
wonder if
see your
putting
point.
the ask out there will help prepare for the future too. We're saying this is what we need. We're not going to get it, but now we have to take that into account for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's, and we can talk this through, I suppose, but maybe it's a matter of articulating what some of those needs are, and whether or not they're part of the official ask or not is a different question. But making everybody aware of what they are.
I think I see Natasha and Mary. Natasha?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, Hillary, some of your questions or concerns I have similar, but I think it's more of, because I was looking at the school council information they provided. I thought I remember that Principal York had her presentation. A lot of that would be more, I would say, budget neutral, but is some of it was the attrition or other areas that there would be more responsiveness, budget ability to be more budget responsive, that it was not going to be more of an ask in order to meet those. And so am I correct? I see a head nod, yes. So if I'm looking at the school council recommendations, because I mean, there's a lot of time that goes into them. I want to make sure that the ones that we're not able to achieve. So when I look at the Fowler, you know, and their increase from 0.8 to 1.0 for music, and what that means, if there's anything that we're not able to, that was recommended and we can't do, I'd like that to really be indicated as this does not account for these school council recommendations, you know, and what that is in some capacity, that, because that, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and I don't want to minimize what we're not, because that's been a conversation piece, like the music one. I just want to go back to that one. You know, the kids right now, they take music up until I think it's like fourth, and then whatever, fifth and sixth, or like there's 2 grades where there's no, unless you're in band, there's like no continuation, and then it picks up again at high school. And I know that this has come up a lot of times in conversations with, you know, when we talk about like a pathway in arts and performing, that is one of those areas. You know, parents invest in buying music equipment for their kids in 1 grade, and then there's, unless they're in band, there's not actually a music class that continues on for, I think it's 7th and 8th grade, and then it starts again. So those are the things that they do come up periodically, you know, and if we're looking about pathways, it does. If it's not able to be done, I get it. But I just would like to make sure that we're somehow acknowledging that what we're not, you know, able to do with this budget that we're recommending. So it doesn't seem like everything is being met under what we're asking. Like there are things that we are not able to meet still with the request that we're put in, and highlighting what those areas that we're still not able to do, I think is important, because that it's we're not asking for the whole, you know, the whole pot, right? We're asking, like you said, you want to be responsible or, you know, realistic in that 5 point whatever %. And that is not taken into account these other areas, which we think are really important, but we want to make sure that they're on the list. Like we did that for the Tiger program, I think for a couple of times, right? We had it, we didn't put it as far as a formal recommendation, but we're like, hey, this is a need. And it was not, before we were able to do that, it was not counted in. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to do that in looking at some of the school council requests that we're not able to really at this point address, you know, until there's understanding of, you know, attrition or, you know, things down the road, but is not considering. Brian, I don't know if you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think we can, I didn't know if you were waiting on me. I was sort of waiting. We can certainly, as you were talking, I was listening, but I was also thinking, oh, we can certainly have a slide that shows the asks and what we think that we're able to do within the operating budget. So if it was a small ask, but it was from, you know, and it made a lot of sense, we're like, we could do that. We don't have to put that on this list as a budget addition because we can fund it. And we
Yeah, and
can
I think that's what
identify the few things that, you know, we've said, hey, we could do that. It's not a huge amount and it has huge impact. We can show that. And the things that we're not able to, we're asking, you know, we can identify. So that's good suggestion. We can add that.
Thank you. That would be really helpful, because I do think we're able to do some of those requests that are coming from the school council, and but not in all.
Right. Yeah, thank you. No, we'll add that. Good suggestion.
I guess along the same line, sorry to jump in, but if you are doing something along those lines, then maybe having some way to acknowledge something that Jeff said, which is that, you know, I have this for next year, but then 2 years from now, if we want that same level of service, we're going to need some way to fund that later. If there's some way for people to understand that that all of these things are ongoing and that we will need to think about, but, you know, budgeting for those things a couple of years out. I wonder if there's some way to acknowledge that as we go through, so that every year it's not like a what, we need that, why, you know, it becomes part of the story that we're always telling, you know.
Right. We can work on that. That can be part of this additional information. So thank you. Yep, that makes sense.
And also just the piece, because I know I did hear Jeff mention about, so basically we have these expenses regarding like service providers as a contracted versus, you know, in-house. I think it sounds like there's a shift to see what we can do more in-house versus contracting some of them, which I know we went through this effort with the nurses at one point too, right? We contracted out and then we realized it was better supportive of our students when it was our own folks doing that type of work. I just want to highlight, because I know it will come up, is that just the benefits piece that we always need to, we get asked about, that each of those positions that we do want to shift onto the operating budget is a benefits package that we also need to account for in some way. So we get asked, and I just want to make sure at some point it would be helpful to understand what that number looks like in a more of an approximate way, that if we're taking off, we're not going to be outsourcing for some certain things and we're going to be retaining in-house, is that going to impact our overall FTE number of staff that will need to be supported from a benefits perspective?
Yep, we can make sure that's part of it.
I want to just mention just quickly, I don't really have a whole lot more than what other people have said, but that, I think it is definitely very important for us to advocate for the things that we want and need for our students. So definitely adding some of that stuff into this presentation, I think would help, even if it's just to let them know these are the things that, that students are asking for, that teachers are asking for, so that they know that it's not just the administration that thinks this is a great idea. And, knowing that we don't all, we're all living in this town, and we're all realizing very, and have been over the years, that there are so many things that we would love to have that we can't afford. And I think that, them, letting everybody in town know that, these are all the things that we would really like to have, but, we can't have them because we don't have the money. And that we're all trying very hard to live within our means. But there are things that, we have to, there's nothing we can do about contractual obligations at this point. And, so, to kind of go forward along with, whatever, the inflation of everything. I think, if you're really thinking about, we're adding, other than the contractual obligations that we have to cover, adding $100,000 on top of that is not a lot to ask for. So, and I think that that's pretty reasonable, but I definitely think that we need to let them know. So, but you guys did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the suggestions. We'll work on that. I'm done, Madam Chair. It's back to you.
Did you have anything, Mary?
I'm just sort of reiterating the same. I quickly did an analysis of I really liked the bar graph, and it shows that huge dip. And if we just took those 5 years, it would have been an average. It was only an average of 4.3%. So if we'd gotten that throughout, boy, we'd actually be in better shape. But anyway, and it's just, like I say, the adding, and as everybody else has said, and I said initially about making the selectmen, my concern is that the selectmen receive that letter, right? They don't receive this presentation. So maybe we send this with them with that extra slide that talks about the things that have been requested, that the schools absolutely say that they need, that we need. And because it's, I'm not sure otherwise how they're gonna see those, that whole the picture, the whole picture, other than February, which I'm feeling is too late because when we have
Well, we're gonna
you
go to
know,
FinCom too. I mean,
Right.
FinCom has to, they have to provide a recommendation on the budget too. So that will be an opportunity, I think, for really, I don't know,
I just always figure that February is too late because January could be when we get another surprise.
Right.
So the sooner that we can get all of this information to the select board, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So, Brian, question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's a great point, and I talked to Greg earlier this week and said, told him I was doing this presentation to the school committee tonight, and once I revise it, I will send it to him to share with the select board, so they actually have it in December. So they'll
Perfect.
have it well in advance,
Thank you.
Thanks.
but I'll wait till we add those slides, because I think those are really important, so thank you.
and I want to also just add, because I said this in our subcommittee meeting, I know that town administrator is very keen on using the term contractual obligations as only to be wages but that's actually not what contractual obligations completely are. It's our contract from our union, but we also have contractual obligations for special education and services. There's a lot of contractual obligations. And so I think he has a narrow perspective and tries to say, well, what is it to meet your contractual obligations? A lot of things meet our contract need to be met. It's not just the wage piece. And so I just felt like I needed to just say that again, because it comes up at every meeting, like this is what the contractual obligation request is. And that's not actually what a contractual obligations are in total. That's really just the wages and salaries part of the contractual obligations. We have a bunch of services and transportation, all of that is contractual. That food service as well. So
We'll try and build that into our messaging as well. Good point.
oh, and the maintenance piece too. I know that that came up at the FinCom meeting, and that's that thing that you had sent over, Wayne, that Mary, we had looked at in our subcommittee meeting about the maintenance for the 5-year, and it had the different lines. Is that something that we could in some capacity or some version of that circulate or share? Because the maintenance conversation does come up periodically, and I just hearing Liam's comments tonight, again talking about the bleachers and what we're doing to maintain them. I really want to demonstrate how much we're spending each year, how we've increased that spending over year, and I think that seeing that number in even if it's plotted out or however we want to do it, I think would be really important to show, because we're going to be asking the town not only for this budget, but for a lot of other things down the road. And I think they, need to have some confidence that we have been increasing our spending on maintenance. And what does that look like over the past, few years? Is that something we could use that Excel sheet that you went over, or did you want to have a different version maybe at some point instead?
I'll work on it. I'll look at that and see, is it a bar graph? Is it,
Just like that bottom number, like, that you had for the grounds and the facilities. I think that was just really, really helpful to kind of put that visual, because we always get questions. How much are you spending on this? And seeing how that amount that we are investing in our facilities has gone up over the past few years is really important to show.
Yeah, and I can work on that and work with Brian to come up with something. The only thing is, I want to bring up the point that they always talk about maintenance and what we do. Our primary purpose and focus are educating students. So most of our budget is for curriculum types or instruction. We have money in there for maintenance, but that's not primarily what we do. And so that's where we try to focus on money. We want to put money towards maintenance, obviously to keep our students safe and to have a welcoming building. But, if we had a budget where 40% of our budget was going towards maintenance, people would be questioning, are we putting our money towards what our primary mission is, which is education?
I don't think Desi would actually, I'm sure that Desi would flag if that much, that would not be something, because I know those 4,000 numbers are things that they do monitor. I think it impacts even the net cost spending formulas and all of that. So, no, I agree. That's not the intent of a school budget, is to sustain aging facilities. But I think it's a good thing to a snapshot, a visual to say like, look, we hear that. This is what we have been doing. And as we get more, money, we do allocate more. But I think it's a point well taken, Wayne. Thank you.
Okay. For chair's report, I don't have much. I just wanted to apologize for not being at quite a few meetings in the last several meetings from being sick and having sick children. And then I just quickly, because I wasn't able to talk last meeting without coughing, and I felt like I really had to say something. I just want to say I really don't support any move to increase detentions or particularly to use detention as a punishment for attendance issues. That there's a lot of data showing the reasons behind school avoidance or attendance issues, and none of the suggestions involve punishing kids with detention. And so I really prefer us to be proactive and use evidence-based methods for that, for many reasons, not the least of which the historic and nationwide issue with discipline being unequally and unevenly distributed among protected groups of students. But that's all I'll say right now for that. Subcommittee reports and members' comments. Mary?
First, I just wanted to remind everybody of this weekend's the telethon, which Beacon Santa up at the high school. It's, I don't know how many years we've been doing it, but it's pretty magnificent that the students do it, and they put their heart and soul into it every year. And anybody that wants to, bid on auction items or just make general donations in that, it's such a worthy cause, and it's just such a great community at the high school. Let's see, as far as the subcommittees, there's been a few meetings, but the wellness committee, we met and went through different categories of where we are and what we need to work on. We're gonna have another meeting with the consultant that we've got. Charles Gabron is putting that together so that we can move forward with that. Like I said, I was able to go to the Maynard High School Advisory Council last week, and just really thoughtful discussion, and everybody that has said that we really need to take into consideration the students and what they're saying their needs are is poignant. And and then Brian, I just had a question, because there was, I think it was one of the superintendent's notes, you talked about the DEI committee, and that you were looking for members, and there was going to be a meeting this week. Did you get people to step up?
We have a great turnout. I think we have 26 members.
Great.
About 15 parents, 10 staff, roughly. I know that's 25 because I might be one of the people, which throws it to 26. But we have a meeting Thursday afternoon as our first meeting.
Really good. I'll be really interested. I know we all will in hearing about that.
Yeah.
So that's it for right now.
Sorry, Brian, is that a virtual meeting or is that a?
No, we're in person. Well, actually, it's both. I take that back. I phrased it as we'd prefer it to be in person, so we're trying that, but we have the capacity to do the hybrid if need be for people.
Got it. Wow.
Well, that's all I have.
Natasha?
Budget wise, we've talked about the budget that we were going into. And then Wayne actually did provide the Q1 report, which I didn't circulate last week. Wayne, thank you. But I'm going to send it over. It basically is Q1 for FY23. So it has months that we weren't really like in full mode. And it just seems that we're not going to end up getting a full school committee presentation on it. And this because the meat of the presentations or the meat of the substance is really Q2, Q3, Q4. But I think the intent was that to give the school committee an opportunity to provide feedback, and if there's any other clarification points on it that Wayne could update in the presentation. I see Wayne's shaking his head. I want to make sure I'm restating what I remember what we were talking about. So good. Okay. So be on the lookout an email just about the Q1 report for the school. And then I don't have anything. Personnel, we're meeting in 2 days, or no, what's today? Today, Tuesday? Okay, this meeting on a Tuesday is throwing me off. Yes, we're meeting in 2 days. And so that's really that. And then I also just wanted to ask about, and maybe policy. And I know Hillary, you had been out, but I didn't know if you guys had a chance to meet recently. I was wanting to see if we get an update on the members' comments and the hybrid approach and all of those pieces. If that was something that would be discussed coming up, that we might be able to hear more about in an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been so sick, was so sick for
I know.
over like 5 weeks that I wasn't able to do that. But we're communicating today to schedule a meeting.
Okay. So more to come on that then, and we can look at, because I really would like to see at a minimum if we can start chipping away at some of the member comments opportunity where we can get people to, either raise hand or something to that effect. I think it just really goes a long way, and in how we want to approach and engage if we're going to be continuing to meet remote at this point. And then I didn't know the new technology that we were hoping to see for the hybrid, if we had a chance to try that out at some point a little bit more, and how that may or may not be something that would work for us in our future meeting. So that's it.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, actually, I have the same question that Natasha just finished up with. As the person who potentially won the loudest, squirmiest home environment this week, like, I am curious about when we are going to be able to meet in person, and how that's working out. Do we have any information on that?
Brian?
I was simply going to say, when you're ready to meet in person, I have to say, we may be the only group not meeting in person of my colleagues. Every other, almost, there may be one outlier as well, but in terms when I'm at the table with superintendents, everybody's been in person for months. So we could come back anytime you're ready.
I thought Colleen needed to
I thought
try
it was
out the software.
Yeah, Jinx.
So that software we have, and we can start. We tried it once, it didn't work so well. We didn't have it, it wasn't all hooked up yet. I will say, from being on the remote side of it, the system that the town uses is not great.
Yeah.
I'll just put it out there. I
wasn't
always
happy
hear
when I
it,
used
they
it
can't
on
always hear
either.
me. It is not a perfect solution. It's probably a legal solution.
So we have a different, that's what you said last time. I remember this because they have the OWL, and you said, or you or Colleen said that you didn't like that one, but we have this different one. So then last I heard and I wasn't again at the last meeting, so I don't know if there's something I missed, but I'm wondering, are we ready then to have that one implemented? And do we know we're going to meet, and does it work, and has it been trained? Have people been trained?
So quick answer. Yeah, great questions. I know Colleen has been trained on it, and actually we have personnel this week, correct?
Yes.
We can, and it's
posted as remote. So
could
you guys
we try it?
You guys, if you're on
we can
site,
try that technology, right?
If I get the replacement keyboard and mouse, because that's what didn't work.
Okay, so we were waiting on a couple of pieces of technology. If we can get those, we can actually pilot it this week.
Could we post our next meeting as in person?
Well, you can't.
I don't think our next meeting, that's a good idea, because our next meeting is next week.
Okay, the weekend.
And we're also voting on the budget too.
How about the first one in January?
Like a hybrid?
Mm-hmm.
That can be a goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we work towards that?
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like to, I don't want to lose the fact that we do have staff who are able to log in, at their home and listen. And even if they're not,
it's hybrid. That's the whole point, right?
Right, exactly. So that's what I want to make sure that that's why going all in person is tough, because then we lose that opportunity of engagement, but we have that that flexibility.
Right. I was under the impression that we had two options, in-person posting or remote posting, but I didn't realize you could post hybrid. Can you post hybrid? Okay.
Yes, that's what the select board does.
Okay. Yeah. So our first meeting in January will be January 5th.
And I will work with Adam and Colleen, Adam Steiner, to get the equipment that we need, and Colleen to have a subcommittee meeting that we can practice this at, so that we can be ready for the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
That will come
And
awful
maybe,
quickly.
I don't know if there's a way to maybe.
Yeah, I think that's going to come up really quickly. And we're not going to be ready for that.
I know. We're going to try. We're going to do what we can. It's really a matter of supply and demand and getting I think the holdup will be the keyboard, whether we can get the pieces of technology that we need for that.
Whatever, if we can do it, if we can't do it by then, we have to do it by the next meeting, which I guess is this 19th, and maybe on the first, whatever it is, say something like this is our first time and we have to accommodate for there to be technical difficulties, or somehow warn the public that we haven't done this before and it's all new technology to us, so that they have to be aware that it's not as, it's going to be clunky maybe. But you know, but
Good idea to
Try it
warn.
with-
yeah, but that shouldn't be, I don't want that to be an impediment. I just want it to be an acknowledgement.
Well, I think that we have some sort of a responsibility to like try it out ahead of time and make sure we have some idea of what we're doing. Because
I am also agreeing with that, but I'm also saying that the first time we tried as a big group, you know, it's going to be a different beast, you know.
Mhm. And I think we have to acknowledge that hybrid meetings really aren't as accessible and inclusive as we'd like for people. Like,
Although I will say that the master planning meeting that we had last night was hybrid. And there were a few people that were at the town hall, and then the rest of us were remote. And they did it was really well done. So I don't know what equipment that they used, but everybody could see each other, and it really worked well. So don't know if we want to take a lesson from them. Brian?
I do want to take a lesson from them. Who chaired that meeting?
So it would be Bill Nemsor is
Okay.
the,
'Cause
yeah, and it was
maybe I'll reach out to him and just,
far better than the selectmen. I don't know why.
yeah,
but-
I wonder if the difference there was that the majority of the people were remote as opposed to the majority of the people
Could be.
being in person.
Could be.
Because all of the meetings I've seen where it's a disaster and really not an inclusive option, the majority of the people have been in person, and the people who are remote are totally forgotten about, can't hear what's being said in person, and really aren't appropriate.
So
Well, the other
was-
danger actually is like, so when Mauro and I went to the select board meeting a couple weeks ago, we were absolutely ignored in that room, and you on the screen were the preference. so it's like really hard. Like Natasha kept speaking, and then we were like, but we couldn't. They weren't even look at us. They were looking.
And
at
I
this-
couldn't see you because I
Yeah.
can't, so I don't even, yeah, we can't even
So-
see when you guys are,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's something about what like there's a problem there about the setup in the room, because you couldn't see us and we couldn't get a word in over what was happening on the screen.
I wonder if it's a matter of you guys having your own, like a laptop where you're muted, like at least we could see, so it's more like either the remote folks or, anyway, opportunity to test in the future. But yeah, I agree. I couldn't tell that you guys, I didn't even know you were barely there at one point. It was just tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we have a plan. We have a plan to essentially try for January. So and acknowledge that there are quirks, and we're going to try it in a subcommittee meeting, and we're waiting for parts. We have a plan. Is that right?
A goal.
A goal is
A
good.
plan, a goal with a plan potentially attached.
Mauro?
I don't have a whole lot. Tonight is the fall sports awards. So hopefully that went well. I've got 3 kids there that are, we'll see what they come home with. So, and then I was also just going to mention the personnel on Thursday and policy, which it's looking like sometime next week that we're going to meet for that. And I'm pretty positive that the public comment is on the agenda. So.
Great.
And that will be with, I know after the last time it got brought up, we got that template from legal counsel who had So would we be expecting to see some version of that like Maynardized, but that template, which had already been vetted? Because I know there was a lot of questions about like the staff and the student and stuff. So that part seemed to be the one that they've already opined on as what's acceptable, and it was based on after the Natick ruling. Is that what you're planning?
Yes.
I was not.
Oh.
I don't really remember. I mean, I read it a while ago, but I remember thinking like Mask has created their recommendations a lot more recently than that one, and nothing that they wrote. I didn't see it as a template. I saw like a list of suggestions, a list of like acceptable ideas or something. No, am I thinking about the wrong
I think
thing?
it was a policy that they
Yeah.
forwarded.
Okay.
So we do have something from legal counsel on this topic that really lays out what you legally we should or should not be doing, which we'll go over in policy. It may be what you're thinking of. I'm not 100% sure, but we definitely have that, and we can.
Okay, that's what I
that-
was wondering. I know that came after
Yeah,
our
we can
last
use that.
deliberation on it, and if that would be part of that conversation.
I haven't like made a new draft of the policy, like scrapping the one from Mask and copying the one from several years ago, if that's what you mean.
No, I was just referring to the one that we got after from, but whatever. I'll see whatever you guys meet. We'll figure it out later.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I've got.
Okay. So we have no minutes this time, but for warrants, let me find hang on. Without objection, I move to approve warrants 23-27, 23-28, and 23-29.
I just wanted to mention that we will be discussing, I think it was 2-8 in our subcommittee, and I think Wayne and in our next budget meeting, there were some expenses on there just to get clarification on.
Okay. So I read the statement to go to executive session, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay. Executive session under MGL Chapter 30A 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Secretarial Union, AFSCME Local 1703, State Council number 93, since an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining of the public body, and the chair so declares, the school committee will not reconvene in open session. And then we do roll call, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mary,
Yes.
Natasha,
Yes.
Maro,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.